Hey, I'm Brad Miller and here with Jason Medford, and today we are jamming with Jason. We're going to talk about Monkey Wrench for the Foo Fighters. All right, just kind of kidding a little bit there. This is not actually jamming with Jason. We are walking a
But
spiritual
I might
path,
have to replay this on jamming. I don't know. We'll have to see. But
but
it's
we are in
it's
fact today talking about the song Monkey Wrench from Foo Fighters, and which seems like a very weird thing to be talking about on this podcast, but here we are.
well, yeah, and I think it's a lot of the jamming with Jason episodes that I do. I because I'm one of these people that a lot of times when I wake up from dream time, I have a song in my head, and I have to listen to the song over and over and over and over and over and over again. Sometimes for an hour, I'll listen to the same song. Like, what's the message I'm supposed to learn from this?
Mhm.
And a lot of times, or there'll be an artist who gets stuck in my head. Like I've been going through this David Bowie thing this last
Hmm.
little while, and so you might have noticed that there was at least one. I'm getting ready to record a couple more episodes about Bowie and some of his songs, so I just can't let it go. It's like he's coming through me, right, trying to tell me something. And so it's interesting, that today, again, because we're here just kind of sharing our experience, right? I mean,
Yep.
and being on the spiritual path is trying to follow intuition, whether it makes sense or not, right? And so, Brad, if you want to tell your
Hmm.
little story about the hike
Yeah.
this morning so people can kind of tee it up and just as an explanation of why we're talking about this song today and
Hmm.
we're all going to figure out why here in a few minutes, but yeah.
Yeah. So we'll start by saying that this was actually not one of Jason's songs that came into his head when he woke up.
No.
Um, this is not one that Jason came up with. This is actually something that came into my head today. As I told him kind of before we hit record today, I would get, kind of channeling my inner Jason this morning, unknowingly. But so I went out for a hike this morning. It was really nice weather. Something said, "Hey, time to go out for a hike." So went out hiking in the woods, and went down to my favorite spot and kind of sat there, kind of just got into some silence and just worked on connecting with nature and opening myself up to whatever messages needed to come out. I kind of put out the intention that I was looking for things that we need to talk about today on the podcast. And so whatever needed to come out, I was open to receive those things. And so I was sitting there and the word wrench popped into my head. And so I'm like, okay, that's interesting. What about wrench? Okay. And then monkey wrench popped into my head. And so I'm like, okay, monkey wrench. What's up with that? And then the Foo Fighters started playing my head.
Ding, ding, ding.
Yeah. And their song Monkey Wrench. If you've not listened to the song in a long time, in a while, go ahead and hit pause on this recording and go listen to it and maybe come back and we'll be here waiting on you. And then maybe this will make a little bit more sense, or maybe you will gain a little bit more insight into what we're talking about today. But yeah, but that's how this song kind of came into my head. And I was trying to like, what the heck is this supposed to mean? And the whole time rest of the time I was in the woods, I couldn't figure it out, but something was just pushing me to something just need to talk about today. So
Yeah, and so I think it's a good practical example of what we've been trying to talk about, which is sometimes inspiration only comes in one or two words at a time. So just like that, Brad sat down, he got silent, he opened himself up. He's like, "Okay, what are we supposed to talk about today on the podcast?" Because he knew that we were going to be recording, one or two episodes today. What are we supposed to talk about? And he just sits there and he just hears wrench. Well, that doesn't make any sense in the 3D perspective, right?
mhm.
And so you got to ask more questions. Well, wrench, what do you mean wrench? Monkey wrench. Oh, right. So now instead of one word, now he's got two words, monkey wrench. And again, in the 3D, how does that have anything to do with a spiritual podcast?
No idea, right?
Until you start hearing the Foo Fighters song, right?
Mhm.
And then you connected a new, monkey wrench. Foo Fighters. Now you've got something to
Hmm.
go with, right? And
Yep.
so before we hit record, right, he told me this, and I'm like, oh boy, you're thinking the same way I am now, right? I'm like, okay, before
Oh, that's very scary.
before we record the episode, we got to listen to it, right? So I pulled it up. What I would typically do is I might listen to this 10, 15, 20 times. I might listen to it over the course of several days, look at the lyrics, try to figure out what it's trying to tell me. We didn't have that time today, but we sat down together, right? Because we got the clues. We got the clues. Monkey wrench, monkey wrench, Foo Fighters. So now you just keep following the breadcrumbs, right? And so we sat down, we pulled up YouTube, we watched and listened to it together. The video, we could see the captions, right? And so we both listened to it. And then afterwards, we kind of talked about it because there were certain things that jumped out at Brad. There were certain things that jumped out at me. Again, 3D, it's like, well, what does this have to do with a spiritual podcast? Well, I think we're starting to get an understanding, and we're just going to let come through what needs to come through for this podcast. But I think it's a beautiful lesson in this is how we're following the breadcrumbs. This is how we're trying to understand the intuition that's given to us. And so it's something that you can do as well. Excuse me.
Yeah. So,
Oh,
yeah, listening to it, like the very first line, what have we done with innocence? It disappeared with time. It never made much sense. And as we're sitting there, those kind of things going to jumped out, and I actually got a little bit of a chill when I went back and listened to it and thought about those words. And so that to me is kind of where things start is, um, innocence. What does that mean? Um, I think innocence could mean life before your spiritual path. It could be a life of, I know it's kind of overused, at least I feel like it's overused, where people talk about how, you're starting to to wake up and everybody else is asleep and all those kind of things. But I mean, that metaphor, at least I think, kind of comes to here where, you know, before you started to think about these things that we talk about in this podcast. Obviously, if you're listening to this podcast, something in here has really got your attention, right? If what we were talking about didn't resonate with you in some manner, you wouldn't be listening, right? You'd be like, okay, those guys are just whack jobs, and then you just go on and you listen to Joe Rogan or something. But the fact that you were here says that there's something here that's drawing your attention, that you're like, hmm. And so is kind of, to me, the idea of starting to push back that innocence, wake up, whatever you want to call it. Um, the idea of seeing that maybe there's more out there than what we think, but also maybe things aren't necessarily as we believe they are, as they seem.
yeah. No, because I think that if I'm just going to interject real quick because today I'm
Yes, please.
coughing and Brad has kind of been hiccuping a little bit. These are all that means energy is actually moving in our body too, right? So don't get distracted with that. But it's something when those things start happening in your body, energy is moving. And so let's bear with us. But there's a little tip too.
Mhm.
But I think, with this innocence, I think, like you said, Brad, when we're born as babies, uh, we know we remember a lot. We're innocent. And there's a reason why babies can't talk, I think, in my opinion, because the veil, if you will, hasn't completely closed yet. And there's, you can still hear wisdom from little children all the time, like little children that'll see grandpa over in the corner, who's passed away a long time ago, different things like that, the little kids will see or say as they get a little older. But we really come into this earth naked, literally and figuratively. right? Because we're innocent. We haven't been given all of the indoctrinations, all of the different beliefs that our parents and family and church and state and whatever school, put into us, that over time, right, it disappears with time. Innocence disappears with time because we're fed all these different things that we start believing. And so we leave that innocence behind. And the last part of that, it never made much sense. Right. And so again, you can read that together. I'm going to read those lines together. What have we done with innocence? It disappeared with time. It never made much sense. And for me, at least, it means it doesn't make any sense to lose your innocence, but we do, right? That what doesn't make sense is allowing our innocence to disappear over time. But that's part of this life as well, right? And it kind of reminds me, the artist Pablo Picasso, the most famous artist known, around the world. And one thing that he kind of talked about, because a lot of his artwork was really childlike in a way, right? At first, some of the impressionist stuff that he did, people would say, "Oh, you're not really an artist. You don't really know what you're doing. That looks like a child made it." But his point was, until we can get back to becoming a child and make art like a child, it's not really art, right? It's dogmatic. It has all these things around it, all these constraints that say that artwork has to match reality. Because so much, especially in the painting at that time, was lifelike, right? Even if it was maybe an allegoric painting, everything in it was painted to reflect the reality that we are seeing in our 3D eyes, not in something abstract, where he was one of the big, abstractists who, started doing things like, eye on this side and eye on the side of the head, right? Instead of both eyes in the front. And for a lot of people at first, it was pretty difficult for them to swallow it, and didn't really think he was a very good artist until people started loving it because something spoke to them, right? And so again, I think, like you said, Brad, that we're, when we kind of wake back up and realize, hey, hold it, my innocence has kind of disappeared over time, and I'd like to get it back. I'd like to get back to feeling the intuition, to connecting with my higher self, to connecting with universal consciousness, right? That's a lot of what this path is when you're waking up, is trying to go back and find your innocence again.
Mm. I like it. Yeah.
So some other things that kind of jumped out, to me in the song too was, because when you think about, if we think about the song um, in a very 3D way, right? Which again, most songs are written with kind of a 3D theme, but there's usually much deeper meanings to them.
Mhm.
And so this song, at least to me, I haven't done a bunch of research, but again, listening to the song for years and now listening to it again, really seems like it's a a relationship gone awry.
Yep.
Okay. That for whatever reason, this couple is breaking up, and presumably the man who's singing it only because the Foo Fighters are men, but it doesn't have to be that way. That, I don't want to be your monkey wrench, which again is kind of a weird saying in a way, because monkey wrench is somebody who's kind of sabotaging something or making it so something doesn't work. And so in a way, what the artist is saying is, look, I'm not going to be the monkey wrench in you having the kind of life you want to leave or live, right? Because it's not what I want. And in order for you to have what you want, I can't have what I want. And so I'm going to leave the relationship. I'm not going to be the monkey wrench to sabotage what you really want in life, right? And so I'm out effectively,
Mhm.
right? But there's also some other things in there that show, obviously, that the artist was not happy in the
Mhm.
relationship. I'd rather leave than suffer this. I was always caged, and now I'm free, right? And I know I've been in relationships over my life where I felt like I was suffering in the relationship, right? That it was causing me pain, it was causing me suffering, and at certain points I just couldn't take it anymore. And I needed to leave, right? To let the suffering go. And in a lot of those relationships, I felt like I was caged or trapped or a prisoner, right? Or a slave. Those were actually some words that I've used over the years to kind of describe some of the feelings that I had in certain relationships. But when I left, then I was free, right? No more the pressure, no more the suffering, no more the feeling like a prisoner or a slave, right? And that's kind of from a 3D perspective, but again, we can turn this around or use this as an
Mhm.
analogy from our spiritual involvement as well, right? Is our relationship with a religion, is our relationship with beliefs that we have, are those no longer a relationship that serves you? Because do you feel caged? Do you feel like you're suffering because of those things? Right?
Mhm.
Is it time to leave? Is it time to have a shamanic death of part of your beliefs, leave a part of you behind, kill it off, right? So that you can be free and move on. Right. So it's again, it's all these different layers that can be
Mhm.
represented in those what seem to be simple lyrics.
Yeah. And I think it also can apply to what we talked about those the first lines there about the innocence.
Mhm.
You started off innocent, and now, um yeah, look back to the words here. Um since I was always caged, the indoctrinations, the things that we were taught, the beliefs that we had. And now as you're waking up, as you're trying to go back to that innocence, now you're becoming free.
Yeah, because a lot of the beliefs, and again, what's interesting, a lot of the spiritual path is simple concepts, but they're not so simple to apply.
Simple but not easy.
Yeah, simple, but not necessarily easy to follow just because they're so simple, and we just have to keep doing it over and over again. But if you think about some of the ways that the world tries to cage people or tries to, take away people's innocence, is is a lot of it is making you even more forget who you really are than how do I say this right? Because so many people will tell you that you're worthless, that you don't know what you're talking about, that you're a nobody, that you're finite, you're going to die and you're no longer going to exist, right? I mean, there's all of these things that people put out there. You've got to be afraid of this. Oh my gosh, what if you die, right? Die physical death. Oh, that would be the worst, right? But those are all lies. Those are all beliefs that are put in place to keep you in lower frequencies, lower vibrations, lower emotions, to keep you from remembering who you really are, right? That you're an infinite, eternal being. You do not cease to exist when you leave this body, right? But that's part of the innocence that we have to kind of claim back is remembering who we are And almost the only way that we can do that is to get out of the fear that we have so much that keeps us trapped in these lower vibrations and frequencies, because we can't hear the universe if we're trapped in those low frequencies, right? If all we can hear are the low frequencies of fear, we can't hear the frequencies of love, of ascension, of enlightenment, of all these things that are trying to come through, right? Just like if this morning, if
Mhm.
Brad had gone out on his hike and he was afraid of some animal getting him, and he was just timid and scared the whole time that he was out there, do you think he would have gotten that inspiration? Probably not, because his mind would have been, his attention would have been somewhere else, right? But he wasn't. He was out there in, yeah, putting words in your mouth. So you tell me if I'm wrong, but you were probably at peace.
Mhm. Yep.
You felt calm.
Yep.
You probably felt some gratitude, right? You were in your
Yep.
favorite spot. You were taking in the
Mhm.
beauty,
Mhm.
and so you were in a higher frequency, a higher emotion, a higher vibration. And so you were tuning yourself to the frequency of the universe and allowing wrench, monkey wrench, monkey wrench Foo Fighters to come through
Mhm.
this morning.
Yeah. 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 Pretty much sums it up. Yeah. Like you said, it's just, again, I mean, this is kind of process I sort of go through some of the similar process every time we record one of these. Um, but knowing that I want to try to open up to allow some of these things through, but obviously it doesn't usually come in a song. It's usually some sort of an idea. It makes a little bit more direct of an idea usually comes to mind. This one was a little bit more of a, I'm gonna throw you a couple breadcrumbs and let's see where it goes. And again, playing into Jason's strengths and things here, um, but yeah, if I wouldn't have been in those higher frequency vibrations, those emotions, the peace, the gratitude, um, just the openness, um, yeah, I wouldn't have. I'm sure I would not have had those things pop into my head Today, like you said, I've been worried about the sounds, and I worried about what's that, and did I, turn off the lights before I left the house, or did I, whatever it might
Did
have
I pay,
been.
did I pay that bill? Did I put the garbage out? Right? I mean, there's all of
Yeah.
these little things that come into our mind every single day, and
Mhm.
most of them don't even matter, right? They don't even
I
matter.
would argue that 99.9% of them don't matter.
Yeah. And I think that's again where, that's why some people choose to use things like yoga and meditation as a way to help train their mind, their practices to be able to help them train their mind so that they're not having the monkey brain. Here we go, bringing monkey in it again, right?
Hmm.
Of all the chatter that's going on in the tree around you. Because if we don't learn how to quiet our mind and raise our frequency, and I know it seems like it's an oxymoron, and so much of the stuff in spirituality is that way, right? Like one of the lines from Lao Tzu and the Tao Te Ching, I have set on for probably a year. If you want to be straight, be crooked. That's it. That's all he says. If you want to be straight, be crooked. Doesn't make any logical sense. Well, finally, about a week or two ago, light bulb went off. And I know what that means for me, at least right now, and what the wisdom is in that. Right. And again, that was something that came to me. I had to sit with it. I had to do the work on recapitulating it for over a year. And then finally it was like, ding. Oh, well, that makes total sense. Now I get it. Right. And it's that way
Hmm.
with all of us. Right. I mean, the same thing. Brad and I listened to this song. We looked at the lyrics. We're getting one thing out of it, and we're sharing that with you. And again, we don't know where this is going, right? And we could have been at the beginning of this, like, no, we have to have an outline. We have to do this. We have to do that. We never would have recorded the fucking episode,
That's
right?
right.
And instead, you just have to let go and just see what comes out. And I'm sure some of this is babbling, and some of it, some of you are going to be like, whoa, there's the light bulb for me. Right. And that's okay. Whether you do or whether you don't, that's fine. Right. We're just supposed to show up and do this podcast. What you do with it is what you do
Yeah.
with it.
Up
Right.
to you.
But if you listen to this song, if you look at the lyrics, it may mean something different to you. And that's okay. Right? Because that's the thing, is we all are not the same, right?
Mhm.
And we don't really get that. And I'm still understanding this, but here's the reality. Everyone listening, you are a unique light being, the only light being like you, exactly like you, in all of the galaxies and all of the universes. There is only one you. You are unique, right? And again, people will be like, well, what do you mean? No, I'm like Brad. I'm like whatever. No, you are unique. There is something in your DNA, in your light body DNA, in your experiences, in who you are, in the experiences you had in this and other lifetimes. You are a unique fingerprint to the whole galaxies and cosmos. There is no one else like you. And because of that, right, you do things in a unique way. You learn things in a unique way. You have gifts that are unique to you, right? And all of us need you the way you are, to go back to your innocence and let your light out for who you are, because without you, the universe is missing a crucial piece. And that's why, again, some practices are good for some people, some are better for other people. Some people have certain gifts, other people have different gifts. Sometimes there's an overlap, and that's okay. Um, but we are unique, and we have to step into that and remember who we are and honor it and provide who we are to the collective conscious. Because without you, there's a missing piece.
So there you go. All from Monkey Wrench.
Yeah. Yep. That's how my brain works. Yeah. So there you have it.
Mhm.
If you'd rather leave than suffer whatever you're suffering, then do it, right? Decide what that is for you, what you may need to leave. How can you get your innocence back, right? Um, if you want to feel free and you're feeling caged, you got to shake off something, right, to get free. Um, Don Juan Matus, actually, he used to say too, still does, as a matter of fact. It's not just past tense with Don Juan. Um, when you are heavy, you cannot fly. And, I think it's Maya Angelou wrote the book, I know, what the cage bird sings or something like that, right? And we think about birds being caged, right? And these things that we're talking about, the feelings of heaviness, of shame, of, all these things like that, if it holds you down so you can't fly, you're caged, right? And so can we shake those off? Stop being heavy, right? Allow yourself to be light, to go lightly, to treat yourself lightly, and then you can fly. And I'll tell you, it's pretty amazing to fly. It's a great feeling when you can actually fly and feel free. Mhm. And
So
yes, all of that from Monkey Wrench.
see, you never know what you're going to get when you tune in.
No,
We
exactly.
don't know what you're going to get when you tune in.
Exactly. Well, because again, we get something out of this, but you may get something completely different out of it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay because art is in the eye of the beholder.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So hopefully you were able to pull something out of that today, whether it's the things that we talked about, whether maybe there's something else that really resonated with you. But again, if you're listening here today, there's something in there that was for you. You just got to find it.
Yep.
And with that, we will thank you guys for listening. Hope you have a great week ahead of you, and we will catch you all on our next episode.
All right. See you, everybody. Thank you.
See ya.